Hello, and welcome to episode 25 of Poetry Worth Hearing, hosted by me, Kathleen Mckibbin, and with music by Alex Heen. As we have general elections coming up all over the place, I thought it might be appropriate to put together an episode with a political slant. Small p, large p, few of these poems are interested in political parties, but cover a range of topics such as war, displacement of people, inequality and social injustice, violence against women, and, of course, the environment. The poets include Jenny Lewis, Rachael Clyne, Claire Cox, Pat Winslow, Jacob Mckibbin, Carl Tomlinson, Heather Moulson, Richard Price, Diana Bell, Caroline Jackson Houlston, and Sarah Watkinson. There is also an interview with poet Rip Bulkeley, who has edited anthologies on Grenfell Tower and for Extinction Rebellion. I decided to organise this episode a bit differently, roughly by topic rather than by poet, so you will hear some poets in different places on the episode. Our first poem by Jenny Lewis is accompanied by Malcolm Atkins and Lizzie Spite of Confluence Cafe. Malcolm tells us the music is adapted from the Song of Psychelos, the oldest surviving complete score, which was inscribed on a stele around the 2nd century AD. It came from near Ephesus, and given Greek control of the Eastern Roman Empire, may have been a kind of song in Palestine in that time as well. Its relevance to Jenny's poem is clear.
A poem by Jenny Lewis. How can we comfort each other when we can't comfort them? We who are made complicit by history, we who are able to choose how to spend our days, the park with its trees letting go of its last leaves, the ducks and swans on the pond floating to conserve energy, allowing the wind to push them towards evening, and the bonfires of an autumn sky. What use are the minutes of my life in which I can feed my cat, talk to my neighbours, check my bank account, go to the corner shop for tins of chopped tomatoes that I can now open with a can opener powered by batteries? What use or excuse that I also have been injured, know the pain of broken bones, my femur that once carried me triumphant over the hurdles, now frail as a reed, ready to be bundled. My body has turned against me in the sleepless nights. It plans insurrections, rebellions. I hear its dry rustlings like sheaves afraid of the threshing machine, or a child on a faraway hill blowing notes through a grass stem held between her fingers. I imagine my skeleton has been replaced by 100 flutes. I imagine my skeleton has been replaced by an old church organ, the organist hunched over it, dressed in leather, and the leather of the bellows makes a broken wheeze as the congregation pales and deceases. I feel the need to go to church, to find respite in those disbelieved rituals that still might rinse the darkness from me. How can we comfort each other if we can't comfort them? What right have we to be living when they are only offered a choice of endings? By whatever powers of hell come out of the dark pavilions of the terrible death-delivering sky. And I am being forced to allow it. Let there be no building on the mass graves of innocence. Let there be another flood. Let the water rise up and cover everything. But this time, no arks and no rescues. Let our eyeballs that watched in silence hang like pearls among the coral reefs. Let the deep rise up with all its creatures. Let the dead become forests.
You can find more about Jenny and her latest book, From Base Materials, as well as about the musicians Malcolm and Lizzie, and about Confluence Cafe, in poetryworthhearing.biz. Next, and you will see the connection, is Rachael Clyne.
Please don't mention I want to mention it, but even though I think about it all the time, I won't, because talk only fires missiles, turns into border checks where the wrong opinion leads to a firing squad. Even families erect walls overnight, sandbag each other, shove dissenters behind wire, collapse in ruins. So I don't mention it, while its shrapnel ricochets around my heart. Its fallout catches my breath.
Our next poem is by Claire Cox. This is Hong Kong, but it could be so many other places.
Their weapons are makeshift. A car's burning carcass, barricades, bricks that checkerboard the streets, jammed under bus wheels, petrol siphoned, can to glass bottle, a pale umbilical cord. They shuttle shopping trolleys for water, food, a snatched embrace, a face mask, kiss, camera on a selfie stick, smoke skying. Downtown, office hands are raised, 5 demands, fingers splay in the air, arrows of flame. Grey uniforms, tear gas, live bullets, his body curls, fetal, a baton swings, the jerk of sneaker feet, blood and handcuffs. The island of my birth has besieged itself. Umbrellas its flimsy shield. Steel masses at the border. No surrender.
Pat Winslow's poems range over the consequences of war, displacement, and oppression.
A man may sell his boat. A man may sell his boat for a small fortune. Who knows what his days are like when he can't meet the eyes of his children? He may turn from the sea and become a digger of earth. A man must do something with his hands after all. But a sower of men is no better than a man who hauls human remains in a net of bluefin tuna. The man who lands a baby will turn over and over in the night till his wife screams for him to stop. The man who digs stuffs his eyes and ears with dirt and makes a tomb of his mouth. A man may sell his boat, as most have done. If he refuses, it is something, but not enough. Among strangers. Not knowing the language, she feels that if she spoke, it would be like a cat's cry sawing through the early hours, her need to be stroked and let into bed for the night, each word a headbutt against their legs. A kick is all it takes. They might laugh like her grandmother did. A cat rolling down the stairs is nothing when war is raining all year round and the river is full of bodies. After. The soldier who stripped naked to wade in and wash the blood off was not someone she knew or cared about. If he was one of them or one of her own, he was young and careful. Who knows what they'd made him do or what he'd seen? She watched him bend down and scoop the water. His penis was like a mouse tucked inside a nest. Give a boy a gun and he'll do almost anything. There. We've been sleeping in corridors, dreaming of hyacinths and bread and coffee. We've grown used to craters and upended carts. Even so, the sight of a dead horse can shock. There were apples as firm as fists in our orchards, and cherries and plums in the trees. When did you last hear a frog sing at night? Remember dancing? How we gathered in the square by the schoolhouse, the squeaky bike and the boy with his smart lapels and cap. If we had a bicycle, we could ride out of here, you on the handlebars, me on the back, making wobble tracks in the snow. We'd be long gone before they realised. It's soap I miss the most, and the view from my window. I was writing a letter before this started. I put a sheet of paper in the roller and the sirens began. Someone else is there now, drinking my tea. Tell me, who's more ghost, me or the soldier billeted there? If he's not dead by now, if there even exists.
And this one, which remembers colonial misappropriation, unfortunately resonates today.
"303 acres of land on the western bank of the Allegheny River was given to Corn Planter, chief of the Seneca people, on March the 6th, 1791, by Thomas Mifflin, the first governor of Pennsylvania. This was a gift. It was a gift of land that the Seneca people had already been living on for a number of centuries before the people of Pennsylvania, that is to say the Europeans, even arrived. It was called The Gift, and that's the name of this poem. And the poem says what happened to this gift. A bark canoe paddling the broad flow, a span of tumbling sunlight, stands of cotton and pin oak, years of thaw and melt, sounding the white waste in winter, a spike and a saw slicing through ice, a long grey fish slimming into view, a spear and a knife, deer hide stretched tight, drying by day. By night a fire, pale smoke in the mornings, the creak of saddle leather, silver dollars in spring, thick pelt of beaver, otter, bear, a hawk circling a planter's moon, ears of corn, beans, squash and melons, tobacco, small quantities of oil for medicine. A gift that's not put to good use is just asking to be taken back, say Stockburger, Kinnear and Noyes. A blast furnace is built, a foundry, a mill race, a warehouse, a landing stage. The gift passes to the Graf Hassan Company. Drake's well is sunk, churches rise, a dam, a bridge, a railway, roads, realtors, banks, Quaker State and Pennzoil move in. In 2006, the city celebrates with fireworks and a rock concert on the shoreline. But the economy's shot, and folks are closing down and selling up. For those who stay, there's little left, apart from rust, food stamps, and hope.
Jacob Mckibbin reminds us that displacement and oppression can equally be found close to home.
Lifestyle choices. Making a choice doesn't always mean that you have a choice. Someone might choose graffiti as a pillow when their other choice is the pavement. Suella writes on X that living on the streets is a lifestyle choice. That many of those who sleep rough are from foreign countries. The parts of this town that I write about are a foreign country to you, Suella, are a foreign country to many of the people who live in this town. Someone who doesn't even choose the colour of their sleeping bag isn't making a choice about where they sleep. And making a choice doesn't always mean that you have a choice, especially when your sense of control has been taken away. Suella, I don't know if you will ever understand this. Suella, I hope the next room that you walk into makes you feel homeless. Catalogue of homeless nicknames. Sticks, Beatbox, Crash, Shaman, Fly, Snowy, Coffee, Body Bag, Yogi.
Many poems I have received or heard recently deal with violence against women, and the horror of what happened to Sarah Everard is a recurrent theme. The first poem in this section comes from Jenny Lewis, and she has supplied a note which you can read in poetryworthhearing.biz.
For Sarah Everard and all those who were not protected. I carry a knife. It's made of cries. Its metal blade shows glints of sky when I walk alone by the river. There's meadow sweet and loose strife, and a swan's eye, and the weir coming up with a narrow bridge where only one can pass at a time. I carry a knife when I walk alone by the river. Sometimes its palette of hues reminds me of snow, the sting of it on my face, my tongue beneath my eyes, and sometimes its brightness strikes me blind with blue, with white. I carry a knife when I walk alone by the river. Its tip is sharp as a razor bill, as a rusty can, as a nail in the shoe, as a hook in the gape of a fish's mouth, as cutting through bread, as slicing meat, as a stab in the ribs. I carry a knife when I walk alone by the river. I carry a gun. It's made of fright. Its muzzle so straight it catches the light when I walk alone in the park. There's the creak of a swing and the spatter of rain on the roundabout and the flash of the moon from behind a cloud on the padlocked pool. I carry a gun when I walk alone in the park. I keep it deep in my pocket, safe as an egg in a sparrow's nest, its handle warm in the palm of my hand, for the lifeline shows a sudden break, and the palmist told me to always carry a gun when I walk alone in the park. Just in case. You don't have to use it. You can bring it home, put it away, back in the drawer. Everyone does it, makes good sense. Better safe than sorry, and no one will ever know I carry a gun when I walk alone in the park. I carry a bomb. It's made of tears and pleas. It's worn and heavy as sleeping bees or wasps. Whichever can hurt the most, be alert the most to the sound of footsteps coming too close in the underpass. I carry a bomb when I walk alone in the dark. Because of the train delays, the late-night bus, the fumbling for keys, the racing heart, the random question, the turning too late to fend off the blow, the please God, I carry a bomb when I walk alone in the dark, round and round the echoing rings of the multi-story. If not for myself, for my daughter, my sister, my mother, your daughter, your sister, your mother, their daughter, their sister, their mother. I carry a bomb when I walk alone in the dark.
Such a powerful poem. And now, Claire Cox, visiting similar territory.
Vigil for Sarah Everard. A candle in red glass, a gesture of light. The city being barred to us, the streets to reclaim being barred to us. We stand up for the streets from behind our living room's closed doors. See the bandstand, the flowers, the torch phones at dusk, her twisted arm, her face on the pavement. Same city long ago. His grip, the tip of his knife, my face pushed to the coping stone, his voice telling me to stop screaming. In my hands tonight, a candle in red glass, our gesture of light.
And to end this section, Rachael Clyne again.
A woman walked. A woman walked into a barman who convinced her she was fat. A woman walked into a metal bar. She said it was an accident. A woman walked into a wall of silence and her case was dropped. A woman walked into a nude photo and her boyfriend shared it with his mates. A woman walked into a priest for help and he helped himself. A woman walked into a free meal and paid with her vagina. 10 women walked into 10 bars and never came home.
And now Rip Bulkeley, an Oxford poet and anthologist, talks about his route into poetry and how poetry and politics come together in his own work and have prompted his anthologies, Poems for Grenfell Tower, published by Onslaught Press, and Rebel Talk, published by the local branch of XR.
You asked how I started to write poetry. Well, I had a very privileged private education. And at my prep school, the teacher was very eccentric. Taught us things like judo and archery. And when we were making pots, we had to get the clay out of the river and so on. But I mean, he gave me lots of verbal confidence with sort of writing exercises on simile or alliteration or whatever. But I don't think I ever started writing any poetry there. I should also mention that I'm a Devonian, and Devon is still today, and was even more so then, a very white part of Britain. And so I think probably the first things I was introduced to as poetry was the Dragon Book, which is named after the Dragon School here. I'm not quite sure what role they played in its gestation. But the Dragon Book is full of what you might call civic poetry about history and about sort of dramatic events such as Paul Revere or the Ballad of the Revenge and so on. So it sort of seemed natural to me that was the sort of thing you would write if you were writing poetry. And the first thing I ever wrote probably was a sort of poem addressed to my county. Very bad, of course. And then the next thing was a would-be sonnet on the Soviet suppression of the Hungarian uprising in 1956, which I sent to the Times and got my first rejection slip. So it seemed natural to me, and as I sort of went on with the classical education, I was reading authors like Plato or Thucydides, Thucydides putting public speeches into the mouths of protagonists for the Milos debate and other such things. And so all that sort of made sense to me, or came to be part of how I saw poetry. But I wasn't really political in any sense until at my public school in Devon. I went into the band in the cadet corps because I didn't want to carry a gun, and I sort of put pacifist poems into the school magazine, which irritated the headmaster very much. But he didn't actually sort of suppress them, and I was sponsored by the head of English, who was very much in favour of me trying to write. But apart from that sort of pacifist strain, I didn't really become at all political. My parents emigrated to Australia, and I went to Adelaide's my first university, and my first love affair and writing poetry there, and none of it was in any way political. It wasn't until I came to Oxford in 1961 and took up with friends who were socialists and went on the Aldermaston marches and so on, where song was very important. And luckily, the brand of Marxism that I fell in with were also a sort of bread and roses approach. That's to say, they liked songs, they liked jokes, unlike some other Marxist groups at the time. And I should also say something about sex, I think, because sex, it's all a question of three-dimensionality, of how you get a grip on the world you live in rather than your own what's the right word, linear kind of life that you're living. But the world isn't like that, and anything that gives you a handle, I mean, obviously when I was here as a student, sex didn't really play that kind of role. But as you live in other parts of the world, it can do. And also this business about sort of being a social poet, leads me to write poems of what would be called science fiction. Eschatology, of course, in the face of nuclear war. That kind of poetry, which is not personal. I mean, I rather, well, I certainly separate myself from what the ancient Greeks called idiocy, which is the private life from which we get our word. And they couldn't understand it. They thought people were very strange if they didn't. On the other hand, of course, they lived with slaves, and the slaves were not part of the polis. But nevertheless, there's that feeling I have, and the sort of poets that I turned to as I was getting political. It wasn't that they made me political, it was just that they fulfilled that need I had to be with poets who were political. Like Auden, Brecht was probably the first, because one of my housemaster's wives was American, and she lent me a long-playing record of the Threepenny Opera. So this sort of got me to feeling that there was this way of doing song and verse. And Cavafy, which I suppose I came to him through reading Durrell's Alexandria Quartet, because Durrell makes a lot of Cavafy and mentions him often. And by the time I'd left university and went to Khartoum as a lecturer in philosophy, a ridiculous arrangement, very colonialist. It's all done through agencies who sort of supplied this paternalistic, foreign lecturers to come and teach them civilization. Ridiculous. Anyway, when I went there, we all felt we were sort of living inside the Alexandria Quartet to some extent. And Cavafy became a natural poet to love. I mean, the copy I have here was published in 1961, so whether I bought it before I went to Khartoum, I'm not sure. Oh, I would have done. I didn't go there till 69, that's right. I don't know, I'm just trying to think what a poem that might... Well, there's so many wonderful poems in this book of Cavafy. I love this one by The God Forsakes Antony. When suddenly, at the midnight hour, an invisible troop is heard passing, with exquisite music, with shouts. Do not mourn in vain your fortune failing you now, your works that have failed, the plans of your life that have all turned out to be illusions. As if long prepared for this, as if courageous, bid her farewell, the Alexandria that is leaving. Above all, do not be fooled. Do not tell yourself it was only a dream, that your ears deceived you. Do not stoop to such vain hopes. As if long prepared for this, as if courageous, as it becomes you who are worthy of such a city, approach the window with firm step and listen with emotion, but not with the entreaties and complaints of the coward. As a last enjoyment, listen to the sounds, the exquisite instruments of the mystical troop, and bid her farewell, the Alexandria you are losing. Unfortunately, I never learned to read modern Greek, but I can see there's this wonderful word, Greek word, hoste. I hope they still have it in the modern language, as if. And that's what if I was to write another poem and for another anthology, it would be this as if. We live now as if we were continuing, but we're not. And that's what I would want to try and capture. But actually, I'm currently writing poems set in a world where we live alongside AI. But and that's again a question of imagining a different society, but seeing how things might work. It's very impossible to write because AI beings, whatever they are not like us in the sense that they're not single. beings. They're all connected. They're doing multiple things at once and thinking multiple things at once in a way that we can't possibly follow. So how they see us, goodness knows. This is, as it were, for a future that I'm imagining that we probably won't ever get to. And thinking about anthologies, I mean, my anthologies haven't all been political. The first one I did was my Oxford anthology, Island City, which came out of poetry reading. I'd conceived of this group of poets and found them all around me and decided to organise what became Backroom Poets. But that's another thing I should say about my education, is that whether I had any natural talent or bent, I was an organiser. Another thing that annoyed my headmaster was we used to have a gramophone club that met to listen to classical music, and that was fine. I enjoyed that. But I wanted to have another club for listening to jazz, and this was much disapproved of. However, I got it to happen. Well, that was the first time I sort of went into organising something, and so I saw it could be done. I mean, in Khartoum, there are a lot of people writing poetry, and we organised readings and published a little duplicated anthology in the technology that I haven't got a copy of it anymore. I've got a copy of my own poems from Khartoum. And that was the thing about living there, Durrell or not, is the extreme poverty and the consciousness that we were, in one way or another, lovers, some of us, with some of us and so on, but we were also living in this society where Muslim women were subjected to female circumcision. And that sort of, I wrote a poem about that. It's not really good, but perhaps it's worth reading just to say the full flavour of what the sort of things that I wrote. It's called City of Love. City of Love, it has always been impossible here to be happy, yet happiness washed over walls of evil, an infinity outside laws of possibility, and I found myself loved and loving, closer than sweat in the eye of uncounted, uncontested afternoons. But a city of mutilations, cutting women down to the size of misery, how could even the holiest, sweetest woman bring us to joy while you went on existing? How could we shut you out of our bedroom and each pretend her nose was shut to the smell of your insane castrations? And city of sweetmeats where children are fattened but rarely respected, how was it in you I achieved our daughters and tasted their new terrors at my heart? What youth will you ever smile upon, paid city of parents? City of love's travesties, shall I stand in line with my 2 reals on your street of urine? Or would you prefer me to masturbate a Mercedes quietly out to costlier quarters, where I can use a cleaner version of the same uncircumcised Ethiopian commodity? Flat, ugly and dirty city of beauties of eyes and hands and arms unbearably reaching out from Tobes beyond hope, where dead desire breaks out like a taste on sandalwood skin. Do you deny the vacuous visual copulations filling your streets, the offices, the souk, yet what else can you do but deny them? City of hate, where some men have to strike the dark scourges of their fear against the slackening skins of foreign wives. Cinema city, of sickly grabbing lusts and force in bed. What a price I must have paid in insensitivity to have been culpable of love in such a city. So, I mean, as I said, anthologies didn't always come from political circumstances, or they weren't always involved in some form of struggle or protest or denunciation. But there does come that time when you feel there's something you can't put up with. I mean, this was what happened with the terrible Grenfell fire, for example. And so my feeling would be, look, there must be people writing poems, and I would reach out and try and find them. It's not difficult through something like Facebook, and get something together. I mean, it's not that it makes any difference or does anything whatsoever for the families of the victims. It doesn't. But somehow it's impossible to stay silent in some cases. I mean, and I never wrote anything particularly worth having for those sorts of things. But that was how that sort of book would be made. And I was lucky to find people writing very worthwhile things there. And, well, in the case of the Rebel Talk for Extinction Rebellion, published by the Oxford group here. Again, this sort of thing doesn't make a difference. It doesn't raise money. Who was it who said that poetry changes nothing? Well, perhaps that's true. I don't know. I think some poems may. Wish I'd written one. Trying to think of what, apart from two Backroom Poets anthologies, Grenfell and then there was Rebel Talk. I think I'm missing one out, but never mind. And my own work has been very little published. I've written hundreds of poems, but I'm not satisfied with most of them. And the other thing I've enjoyed writing has been songs. Again, they don't get sung, but I find that which comes from my background in the time of Alder Masterman, those 1960s years, was that was one thing you did as a way of expressing your feelings, and you just take an existing tune and rewrite the words. Let's find something else. Let's find something. Now, what is this? Oh, this is one for the time of COVID. Well, it's a tribute, obviously, to Auden, and it's about the people who died who were not victims of the plague, but whose funerals were difficult to arrange and so forth for the relatives. It's called The Other Dead. It's dedicated to a few of my friends who died in those circumstances. Oh, Quasimodo Sunday, in case it needs explaining, is the Sunday after Easter. The Other Dead. In Brussels, the Musée des Beaux-Arts is closed until Quasimodo Sunday, some hopes. Across the world, marinas crammed with expensive, delicate boats are off limits to irresponsible parties. The aged especially are barred from gathering in expectation of nativities, miraculous or otherwise. Few children are out there skating in either hemisphere, but all are on thin ice. As for torturers, they must find social distancing a hindrance even from horseback. The labourer still stands to the plough, the shepherd at the fold, but for how much longer? If they turn away from all other deaths, it is not because they have none themselves. Yet for those who suffer ineligible loss from causes that were not the plague, let neither sunshine nor the turning of the stars dare plead necessity to mitigate the cruelty of the times. Maybe I'll read a poem from... I wrote several poems during the first part of the war in Ukraine. And it's an interesting question of why stop. Perhaps there's nothing more to say. Very hard to know why stop, but I did stop eventually, and I'm sure lots of other people did too. I mean, so what I'm thinking is, I suppose I'm thinking about an essay by Régis Debray, Tourists of the Revolution, as his description of the student left in the 1960s. And I never had much time for ekphrastic poetry, in the sense of poetry that turns to a work of art and then writes. In spite of Auden's wonderful poem, but there's a sense in which poems written about a war that you've nothing to do with are also ekphrastic. And yet somehow if you write poetry, it's the way you respond. This one is simply a case of trying to imagine an aspect of war which people don't talk about. It's called war shit. All present on any battlefield, enemy 1, prisoners, enemy 2, non-combatants, must repeatedly open their bowels. 4 tons of cess per day per 10,000 more or less well-fed anuses. A common chorus of pungent farts like mating frogs is not entirely masked by the shelling. Only the pitiful dead, focused on rendering their particular sharp olfactory contribution, no longer defecate. When the land was empty, forests vast and armies small, this was a minor nuisance. An archer, say, taking a few steps back, could drop their hose, do their business, and return to the line in moments. As time passed, the better protected upper classes sometimes found things more difficult. Many squires must have scrubbed more than rust and blood from armour. After battle, the victors, holding the ground, could move a field or two away in the evening to avoid presaging Bloemfontein or Andersonville. As numbers grew, sanitation challenged generals such as Frederick. Mobility was some alleviation. Under Marlborough, the houses of office were supposed to be replaced every 6 days. Who knows whether that always happened? In the trenches, the dry earth latrine, developed in India, could seldom be achieved. 1 seat per 10 was the ideal, surviving manuals airily ordained daily burning out, filling with earth when 2 feet from the surface, and clear signage. Bucket service was generally preferred and mandatory in heavy mud, despite which many soldiers have died with their trousers at their ankles. With urban warfare and large civilian numbers, everything changes. Besides food, water and power, sewerage quickly breaks down. Penned in by a lethal crime scene, discipline is hard to achieve and facilities non-existent. The degradation of underground DIY logistics, many rags but few buckets. The imperious bowels, however, must still be relieved, and conventions followed where squatting in the open is normal for some, may be unfamiliar. Along the trackways of misery, refugees have also been compelled by sorrowful custom to fertilize the verges. Nowadays, sniffer drones could identify the dietary signature of an invading column from its 65-kilometre stench. But like scavenging, sex and blood splatter, the Universal's war shit is redacted from mainstream TV footage, which some call unbearable, despite thousands like them who daily bear it all, and have done so in many places for centuries. Remember this coarsening of savagery, stranger, next time your arse greets the porcelain.
The next 2 poems take a not entirely funny look at the political system, capital, and commodification. First, Carl Tomlinson.
Hairline. Facebook wants me to shave my balls. or at any rate purchase a razor specifically for this task, as, apparently, no one wants bits of pube on their chin. Perhaps because I wet shave, my first thought is, wouldn't you just change the blade? Instead of, don't you dare to tell me that bits of my body won't do. In a slight, sad way, I'm grudgingly glad to glimpse for a second, no more, a few weeks before I hit 54, what it might be like to have to find ways of ignoring this shite for most of your life.
And now, Heather Moulson.
In politic. Early one morning before porridge, Mum told me we had a new Prime Minister, but she couldn't have forecast the bitterness of a 3-day week, power rations, candle wax, burnt fingers, coming home to a cold tea. When Mr. Heath went to the country, I imagined a cosy cottage in Norfolk. On the TV, someone threw red paint on his suit. I fretted that it wouldn't come off. But not for long. I was having fun with Slade records and yearning for a Trevera coat. I'd barely noticed Mr. Wilson creep back in, and by crisis, what crisis? I was living it up in the Mediterranean. What winter of discontent! When I heard a whisper of a woman Prime Minister, I was dancing abroad, my only worry being what dress to buy. I eventually returned home, broke and unemployed in a turbulent political climate. I swung from extreme don't know to the far don't care, as I queued up at the Labour Exchange, still wearing my false eyelashes.
And now, 2 more poems from Rachael Clyne, the first with a different take on personal adornment.
Pretty Little Things from a Google search. Spice up your wardrobe. Animal is an action lifestyle brand, organised alphabetically from endangered antelope to vanished zebra. Bargain hunt our clothing and accessories online. Our skins are available in a range of colours or muted hues. Animal flip-flops, swimwear, jumpsuits have designs to die for. Opt for our latest celebrity-inspired range at must-have prices. Our hottest pieces will have you in a clothing frenzy. Fear not, this killer spree won't break the bank. Animals use cookies to give you the best experience. Growing old is when the gap between your century and this is the wake of a ship sailing away. When that which you thought beautiful no longer tastes sweet in today's mouths. When your cherished hopes are so much plastic in the face of this generation's future. When you realise your privilege was bought at the cost of everything. When freedoms you fought for are reversed or irrelevant. When your body is a dictator tightening its screw. When your wisdom is so much blah blah. When your memory is critically endangered. When your favourite song is a care home activity. When your underarm sways like a hammock. When the soul you strove to cultivate dims at the edge, glows hot at the centre.
The next poem is by Richard Price, who was featured on episode 20. He has allowed me to reuse this beautiful poem, or song, from his recent collection, Late Gifts.
the air that he breathes. I have a little boy, late gift in last days. He laughs so freely, and that's how he plays. He doesn't see nothing's free, least not the air that he breathes. I walk with him, I take his sticky hand, we risk the road, he skips to a scrap of land. Beneath old trees, refugees twitch in their sleep. Oh, we're all sharing the peace and the air that he breathes. There's a five-a-side field. It's all marked down for shops and flats, affordable homes, and zero rate of tax for land bank owner absentees. There's a government decree. There's a short-term lease on the air that he breathes. I never thought I'd leave this world with the children fighting for air. I never thought I'd see this greed and leave them choking there outside at the gated community wall. I didn't think at all. I believe the things we need should be free, including the air that he breathes. I have a little boy, late gift in last days. He laughs so freely, and that's how he plays.
You can hear more of Richard Price in episode 20 and find more about him and all the other poets in poetryworthhearing.biz. Next, Diana Bell with a poem which gives us a bird's eye view of hierarchy.
Bird wisdom. The birds are talking to me. The robin sings about working together. You dig the earth and I'll eat your slugs. This is how the world works. The great tits are chattering in a crowd. They sing about families. We must all look after our own. This is how the world works. The blackbird is more cautious and keeps her distance high in a tree. Take care who you are involved with. This is how the world works. The pigeons talk quietly, waiting for their opportunity to swoop, to take, to steal. This is how the world works. And the kite soars high above, silently watching, seeing all and saying nothing. This is how the world works.
And now, back to Claire Cox.
Portrait of my house as a mangrove swamp. You've had to learn fast about change, drought, stroke drown, salt, stroke fresh, ill, stroke well, silt gatherer, shark nest, refuge for fish and egret, you shelter me. Frugal now in my feeding, I've adapted to eat air. I emerge at low tide, wave one outsized red pincer in terror stroke hope.
The next poem is by Caroline Jackson Houlston.
Balancing act. What the moth wanted was modest. Less than 0.0001% of sweater to fret into the small drab silks of its new family. For the few, white-haired, war-bred, the shirt too shameful for Oxfam is washed and quartered and buried in the triangular crypt under the stairs, with a sleeve for the window lean. And, for the brass, half an underpant. Some of it is sheer wanton tidiness. Some of it is gourmets cutting corners off sharks, or swapping river dolphins for a hydro dam that checks the floods of red silt bleeding from the scarified bald hills. Greed is a god worshipped in pretext. Every year, to be comfortable, I need to eat a forest the size of Wales. Let us cut the pie in half, half for me and half for the world. That leaves half a pie. Let us cut the half in half. That leaves a good slice of pie. Let us cut the slice in half, half for me and half for the world. This is called balance.
And finally, I'm very grateful to Sarah Watkinson for allowing me to present a poem from her recently reissued collection, Photovoltaic.
Habitat loss. Was it lost or never found? The thousand-flowered tapestry, the public good, the common ground? The bay where herring queens were crowned, the quiet sky, the fruitful sea, was it lost or never found? Small city squares to stroll around, accidental, open, free, a public good, a common ground. Translucence of a glass-dark pond, amphibian diversity, was it lost or just not found? A wood where chanterelles abound that's not some shooter's property, a public good, a common ground. A stranger, welcome to the round, untallied generosity, was it lost or never found? The public good, the common ground.
And so we reach the end of this episode, which has had more real politics in it than most of the manifestos. I hope you've enjoyed listening. The next episode will be in September.